So you said you had a meme to share this time.
I do, and this one's office related.
Oh, The Office.
Yes. So there's two panels. The first panel is Pam holding out two pieces of paper, and on one is written forger, and on the other is written rememberer. The text below it says, corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. And the next picture is Pam in the little asides with shy over her chest saying, they're the same picture.
I get it. I appreciate it. I love it. Hello, welcome to Cosmere Casual. I'm your co-host and apparently not a meme enthusiast, Nick Gorman.
I'm always good for a good office joke.
No, it's good.
And I'm AJ Gorman, your co-host.
And we're here to talk about The Emperor's Soul, which is a short story by Brandon Sanderson in the Cosmere universe. And this episode is a post-read sort of review of the book without any spoilers for other Cosmere books.
Yeah, we're only gonna talk about the book in and of itself. We're not really gonna draw in other books into this or how this relates to the larger Cosmere. That will be the next episode.
Yeah. So I think in terms of like a plot recap, there's not a whole lot that wasn't, that's not obvious there, right? Where the plot it felt kind of by the numbers, right? Where the thief was captured, the authoritarians in control, need something from her. She knows that they're going to try to kill her, and they know that she's going to try to escape. They try to kill her, and then she escapes.
But not before she creates her greatest work of art yet.
Well,
she actually reforges the Emperor's soul.
Well, and she's also...
Or rather, forges the Emperor's soul.
But also, she and her, minder, Gaetona, are both changed from having known each other, right? And that's where I thought the real artistry of the book was, that relationship between them. But still, I guess in terms of the plot and the plot twists, I think the biggest twist from this book was that there were no plot twists. And as much as I love a good plot twist, and
because you saw everything coming.
Yeah. And like, as much as I, and like they, the characters all saw it coming, right?
They did, but you read a story not because you don't know the story, because there's like only 7 true stories.
Yeah,
but you read it because you don't know the details of how everything is going to work out.
Real hero with 1,000 faces vibes in this one, which it's still very good. It's still my favorite Brando Sando book. Yeah. And I was just thinking, I was like, as much as I love a good plot twist, and as much as Brando Sando is known for his good plot twists, and this is my favorite one of his, and it doesn't have either of those, it makes me wonder if I actually really like the good plot twists.
Plot twists are good, but this short story was not about that. This short story was more so to explain some things going on in the Cosmere.
Oh, I think it's more. I think it's also just a simple story told well.
That is true. Which I feel like is very tough for Brandon, because short form is not his normal wheelhouse. Yeah. And I think maybe if you read this several times over, I think you start to understand that, because there are so many like hints and clues to a larger universe world going on in this story, like so many names and stuff that are referencing things, but you never find out what it is. But for certain that Brandon has a whole, like, multiple histories of thought put into this world, and we're only catching a glimpse of it.
And more on that, I think, in the next episode, yeah? In our connection, or...
I was just talking about the history, like, of the Empire.
Oh, like the Rose Empire? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, between, like... Okay, no, I dig.
Because, I get the feeling that the Rose Empire has been going on for multiple thousands of years, because they're always talking about different. They're talking about different eras.
Mm-hmm. And like what obviously the rememberers are remembering something, right?
Right, and yeah. So I don't. Well, never.
Yeah, no. It's still Brando Sando. It's still a very detailed world. There was a lot of world building, and the Empire feels like a real setting, right?
Right. And I think putting stuff in there that doesn't directly relate to the plot or the book does fill out that world a little bit more. It's frustrating because you're like, I want to know more about that. I want to know more about the Strikers and how they got folded into the Empire and how they're being treated now. And I don't know, maybe those questions will be answered later, but probably never.
You and I have very different experiences of reading this book.
That I know. That I know. You read this book and you're like, this is a philosophy short story.
It's so... All right. Can I... I'm just going to go through some, the beats of what all Gaetona was talking about, what all he was going through. In the prologue, he tells the other arbiters that Shai will not be easily manipulated, and if they're not careful, she's going to end up being the one who manipulates them. In day 3, he tells Shai, whatever you touch is corrupted. In day 30, which is like 2 scenes later, he presents himself to Shai as the test subject to everybody's surprise, and then ends the day so upset that he destroyed a masterpiece, of a painting in Frava's office.
Well, Shai destroyed it.
Yes. And from then on, though, he also starts, presenting himself, to be stamped, to receiving the stamps, to test out Ashravan, the Emperor's soul. And he starts speaking to her more open-mindedly about what he's learned about forgery, even though it clearly makes him uncomfortable. AKA, like he said 27 days ago, he's starting to obviously become more corrupted, even though he still gets offended about, Shai destroying the painting.
I mean, is opening your mind to other ways of living and thinking being corrupted?
If you're in a strictly orthodox, in a very strict society, with a where they value a philosophical purity, then being something else, yeah, I mean,
it's a little strong for me.
I'm not trying to make a value judgment. I love how he grows as a character. So anyway, so that's, what he does in day 30. On day 98, after he's, continued to get to know Shai over the course of the book, he brings her the essence marks and asks Shai how she manipulated him so thoroughly to get him to bring those to her, right?
Right.
And, it's kind of fulfilling his prediction in the prologue that she would be the one manipulating them.
Well, and Shai even has thoughts about this towards the beginning of the book, and she's like, I can't fool this guy.
Yeah.
Which means the only way that I can get what I want out of him is to actually be honest and genuine.
And that's the hardest forgery of all, isn't it?
Well, for someone who lies for a living, yeah, I think so.
So, and then the very end of the book, he, on day 101 or whatever, he spends the day thoroughly appreciating Shai's masterpiece in how she brought Ashravan back to life. And then that night, he spends all night reading the detailed notes that went into making it. And then he has to destroy that book, even though he's recognized it. He
doesn't have to. I don't think she left instructions for him to do so.
Well, no, but he knows. And it's just so... it's a beautiful completion of his character arc where he starts out being so upset. He is so upset at her for destroying a masterpiece of a work of art.
And then he does it himself.
And thinking of forgery as not true art, and how could you waste all your potential? And then by the end of it, he not only recognizes her as an artist, he also recognizes the Emperor as a masterpiece of art, and then destroys everything that went into making him. And it because he has to, because he can't let the secret get out, because that would not only ruin their political chances, it would also make the forgery less likely to hold, right?
Right.
For multiple reasons, he has to burn those notes. And it's so fitting because he was so upset at her, and then he recognizes the need to do it too.
Yeah, and it's those surrounding stories that really make a Brandon Sanderson novel to me.
Yeah. So it's but it's also like there's another way it could have happened where he could have still ended up burning the book, right? But if he were a different character, he could have been spitefully burning it, like as an act of retribution, right? Like you destroyed something great, and I'm going to destroy your great works too. But because you've already gotten to know him as a character so well, that that doesn't seem right, right?
Right.
So I love that. I love that scene. It's just such a coming. His character art is complete. It's so it's so much.
I never really thought about his arc all that much. So thanks for bringing that up.
Oh yeah. The other thing that I think about in terms of so like right, his art covers a lot of things, like is is imitation art on its own, forgery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also is it, can you destroy art in the process of appreciating it? But that second, that discussion they have about burning the painting, the lily of the spring pond.
So just to give some background here, Shai had been a friend of the artist for that work of art, and that artist had created that work of art for a lover, and the lover had then passed away and was upset that the work of art had made it into the Empire's gallery, and he didn't, since his lover was gone, he didn't want other people to be looking at the work of art that he created for the lover. So Shai was asked by the artist to destroy the painting.
Well, and there's layers to it, right? Where not only did it make its hands into, the Rose Empire, which the artist Han Shuzen, which he despised, but it's also that it made the hands into Frava, who was one of the most powerful and also politically corrupt, even if more ideologically pure, most politically corrupt out of the arbiters, right? So it's just, there's a level of, they're talking about burning the art so that nobody else can appreciate it, and Gautana is very upset that hey, the original won't be available for anybody to appreciate anymore. But Shai's point is, hey, what the author intended still has meaning, and anybody else who looks at it is going to see something that they're going to think is real and is an exact copy, right? It's just like having a print instead of the original painting. But
you're losing me a bit. But I think what you're trying to say is that everybody interprets the art differently.
The situation reads like a thought experiment, right? Where it's like, is Shai's forgery, is it good enough? Because both Gautana and Shai think it isn't, but they think it isn't for different reasons, right? Because for Shai, it was meaningful to her and to Han Shuzen to not have the original in the hands of the Empire. They would rather see it burned. And, they've got a copy up there. That's good enough, right? Anybody who looks at it will still appreciate its majesty, its beauty. But then, Gautana is still aghast because it was substantially a thing of beauty, right? And so it feels like, all right, so they...
Well, and I mean, it brings into the thought experiment of, you create a work of art. Does it still belong to the artist, or does it belong to the public or whoever's viewing it?
Yeah.
So what right do you have an artist to say what happens to your work after you finished it?
Exactly. Yeah, there's that. Yes.
Because I mean,
and you can have a different
we see
opinion.
that in our world all the time.
Yeah.
We have plenty of artists asking politicians not to play their songs at rallies and things like that. We have plenty even with copyright, we see lots of old manuscripts like Pride and Prejudice being taking that work of art and then editing it. I think someone's turned it to like Pride and Prejudice and Vampires or something.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, yeah.
And Zombies, yeah. So like, once your work of art has entered the public domain, what rights do you have as the artist? What if you're alive anyways? Even if you're not alive, do we as living people have the right to do anything with that?
Right. So it's like it's multiple thought experiments rolled up into one, where it's, okay, do you still own the work as the artist or the author? But then also, is a copy or a derivative work, art on its own, separate from the original?
And I think what the argument in this book is the answer is yes.
Well, it's I don't know if he gives you any answers, right?
Well, at least in Shay's mind, the answer is yes.
Yes, but like in her mind, the copies that the quote unquote rememberers do, like the vases that they just churn out, even though they are beautiful on their own, she views them as hollow because there's no thought or artistry put into them.
They're mass produced.
Because they're mass produced.
I mean, I feel that way about art that I buy. Like, I don't want to buy mass produced art.
I mean, I have a hard time articulating why, but I mean, I
think it has a lot to do with intention.
Yeah, right. I think I agree. I just have a really hard time explaining why. And the vignettes in this book about it, where, yes, Shai's making derivative work. She's starting with something and turning it into something else, looking at what could have been, things like that. But the things that she produces are just inherently, I don't have pictures to look at, but like the way it's presented is just more beautiful than the mass-produced vases.
So, which brings me, I had actually picked out a line here. Shay had a thought where she said, people would often accept the fake because it was superior. So my question is, do we just like, quote unquote, the best until we know or find something that's superior?
Well, so the context on that one is forgery, right? Whether or not a forgery will take, right?
Right. So Shay gets caught swapping out paintings, and they compare the paintings and realize that, there are these slight differences. And the reason why they think that they still have Shay had actually made the swap. So what they think is the original is actually the one she painted.
Right.
And Shay here is thinking, well, of course they think that they have the original because the one that she painted was better.
Right. Yeah.
And they're willing to, it doesn't even enter into their mind that the paintings had already been swapped because the one that they think the original is better.
I thought they were both fakes. They were both forgeries, right? Because this is the one because she burned the original. Because this was the Lily of the Spring Pond.
Oh, shoot.
I thought there was another example where the window, quote unquote, wanted to be stained glass, and it took because it was just there had been like a tiny part of it that had been stained glass once, and the whole window the forgery would only take when it was as good as it could most possibly be. You're picking up the book. That, I don't know, that was something that I struggled the most with in this book, was the idea of inanimate objects having desires. Like, I can understand with the way that magic works in the Cosmere about, the collective impressions of things, creating a soul or a perception of it in the cognitive realm that can alter how it has appeared in the physical realm. But I had a hard time with the feedback going in the other direction as well. So the window having a desire.
We were both wrong.
Oh.
She had that thought in regards to the table.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the same, all of the things in her room. Like they gave her a shabby, one step up from a jail cell, and she ended up with the finest room in the palace, if not the largest. And it was because all of the objects wanted to be better versions of themselves.
Don't we all?
I was about to say, do you think continuous self-improvement might make appearance in other books?
Once or twice.
Which kind of segues nicely into another thing that struck me in this read, was about Shai's perfectionism. And I mean, in the beginning of the book, she's constantly telling herself to be humble. She's got, like Uncle Juan always says, there's always someone better. But then as we go on, she gets, and her plan in the beginning is to get far enough along and then escape. Right.
But she just can't.
She just
do
can't.
It.
She gets so invested in her work.
Just like when you're reading and you're like, I'm going to stop after this next chapter. And then before you know it, it's 2 a.m. and there's only 2 chapters left. So you stay up until you finish that book. Well, that's exactly what's happening. And I love it.
Yeah. But like, even besides rebuilding, Ashravan's soul, she gets obsessed over fixing everything that she can get her hand on. Sometimes it's out of boredom, but she obsesses over fixing the window, over having a dynamic work of art popping up on her room.
That she obsesses over it.
I mean, it starts out not that way, but like when she goes to demonstrating for Gautana the art on the wall, I don't know, that seemed like a little over the top. And where she was really frustrated with the windows not being able to work. Wait, when I put it that way, I wonder if that was Brando Sando expressing computer frustration, because I can never get Windows to work either when Teams updates.
Ha ha ha.
But anyway, going back to her perfectionism, she has this plan, this exit strategy to just get out of there early. But then she gets invested in her work, and it ends up nearly costing her her life. Like, she gets down to day 98, the last possible moment. Captain Zhu is coming for her, and she has no sleep and is completely disoriented.
And I feel for her. I've done that so many times with my work.
And she's got the Emperor's soul completed and perfect. Well, imperfect, because it's still a soul, right? But it's just I love it.
She finished it.
But she finished it. And it's, it's relatable, right?
So relatable. That's another reason why this is a good novel.
Yeah. So, and
whether you agree with her philosophy or not, that
right.
whole overall arc of not leaving until she's finished her work is very relatable.
And even at cost to herself, and even when it's past the point of being wise, or even necessarily good. But I started on a note here, and then I apparently didn't finish, so we're just gonna be improvising. There's this topic that keeps getting brought up in the book about there's dichotomies between truth and lies, purity and corruption, authenticity and fakery. And for Gautana, it's always, at the beginning of the book, it's clear, right? He is unpopular as an arbiter because he doesn't want to give in to corruption. He's the only one who doesn't try to get Shy to put a backdoor into the Emperor's soul to try to corrupt him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't agree with forgery at the beginning because it's
an abomination.
Well, not just because it's an abomination, but because it's stealing, the idea that somebody else had. It's he doesn't put it in those terms, but it's like, well, you could have been a great artist. Instead, you just copy and imitate others. And
because at that point he didn't believe that forgery was. But I mean, I think Brandon is very clear with Shy, but I guess it's easy to miss. Shy has all of the abilities to do the copying physically that she does with forgery. So she has the painting skills. Well, she has, she has, she
doesn't have nothing. It helps, it means that a forgery has to do less. Like, she is not, like, she had to have coaching from the master painter, Han Shuzen, but I don't think she was a master painter on her own.
Yes, she was.
Huh.
I guess you missed it.
Apparently I did. I read it differently, right? She couldn't be a novice.
She has to have the innate, like with the wall, she talked about she had to have the innate skill to be able to do that, whether or not she had done that exact painting before, which is why Gautona is so frustrated, because she has all the skill to do that artwork by herself without forgery, and yet she chooses to use forgery.
I guess where I like where the book ends up is like, so that's where Gautana starts, where there's clear lines, and he gets frustrated that even though she's got these skills, she only uses it for copying, for imitation, for forgery. But then for Shy not, doesn't just copy things, right? She makes the table a better version of itself, right? She makes she's tempted to input, back doors into the Emperor's mind, into his soul to benefit herself or others. And instead, the only quote unquote corrupting she does to him is to make him, remind him of his earlier ideals, right?
Mm-hmm.
To make him a better version of himself.
And I mean, that's how she views forgery. That is her inspiration for her art.
Right. And
which is beautiful.
So, yeah.
And inhuman.
And the arbiters, they're all about, they hate forgery because it's in their mind, the forging a soul, makes it impure and corrupt. But then what do? Right? They're each of them except Gautana tries to get her to insert backdoors into the Emperor's mind to benefit them. So like, who's really the corrupt one between them, right?
Yeah, they all do the same thing. It's just how they do it is a little different.
Yeah, so I really liked that those dichotomies coming back up and maybe getting inverted, right? Where
Well, I also like the dichotomy of forgery itself, because going back to that table, she chooses to put the stamp on top of the table where it's clearly visible, because that stamp kind of tells a story of how she's rewritten its history. And she's proud of that stamp. She's proud of the work that she put into in rewriting that history, and she wants it on display. Whereas all of the rememberers, all of those stamps are on the bottom and hidden.
Yeah.
But it also means that every single forgery that's done is imperfect, because there's always going to be that stamp that shows.
Well, yeah, it's imperfect as a copy, but it's not,
imperfect. Yes,
yeah.
Imperfect as a copy.
Right. Because it's like, well, I mean, do you call a painting imperfect because it's got the author's initials or signature at the bottom? No, it's also a sign of like that's their own stamp on it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good analogy.
Yeah. Thanks. I try to have clever insights every now and again. Do we want to talk a little bit about how the magic system works too? But now that I'm done gushing over the themes and philosophies that I loved about it.
I have one more philosophical question that I wanted to touch on. We've been mentioning it a little bit here, but about the rememberers. So these are the emperor-sanctioned forgers that will forge pieces to look like old historical pieces of art, whether that be
they'll take mass-produced, cheaply thrown, pottery, and then stamp it to look like some artifact
from thousands of years ago.
Yes.
So, what do you think about that? Do we think, that's so fake, or the emperor's, the empire's reasoning for this is, we want to appreciate our past and we want people to be able to experience it, and this is how we can experience it. We're remembering the past. Do you think it's good to be surrounding everybody with the past?
So, I guess there's what they're saying versus what they're doing, right? Like, yes, they're nostalgic for the past, right? In some ways, that's been I guess, yeah, and that's kind of their whole deal, right? Like that's their political faction. They're the heritage faction. That's what they do. They glorify the past. I'm not super wild about that. There's a lot of people who yearn for yesteryear when everything was simpler, but modern history at least has always been moving out of, oh boy, things have been really bad, and then things feel like they're getting worse, but I don't know, by a lot of objective
measures. You really
measures,
don't want to go back and live in the past,
yeah, I don't want to go back before antibiotics were around. I don't want to go back before civil rights were a thing, right?
Right.
I mean, like, yeah, there were things that we did then that are leading to problems now, like maybe climate change or whatever, but like, I don't know, man.
In the grand scheme of things, we've never had it so good as we do today.
Yeah. Where I thought you were going with that was, Shai looks down on those rememberers because they don't put any heart or soul into it, right? They're just mass producing
one forger,
phases,
one forger is interchangeable from another, whereas what she feels like she does is only she could do. Yeah,
she's more of an artisan, and they're not. They're more like cogs in a machine. But the results of that, I think there's a place for both, right? Because I like, we've gotten to some museums lately, and it's been really nice to see these exhibits, these things that there's some one of a kind stuff in there, and it's marvelous, it's magical, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for us, we don't have enough money to buy any of that, right? Like we wouldn't be able to appreciate it. Whereas we can go to Target and get a cheap print, or we can go to a Goodwill or an art show and get we can see the original on sale for hundreds or thousands of dollars, and then the print for like 5 or 10, right? And like being able to have access to that in our home, or just have easier access to it, is really good, right? Like It's nice to have art.
It is.
No, that's yes. I almost didn't even think about that, but you're right. That is a point that comes up.
Yeah. What do Sydney and Justin always say on their show?
On Sawbones?
Yeah. When people try to tout medicine, they're like, "Oh, this is what they used to do in the old days."
Oh, it's the wisdom of the ancients fallacy.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Appeal to ancient wisdom.
Yeah, appeal to ancient wisdom. And it is a logical fallacy.
Yeah.
Right?
But we fall for it. I'll fall for it sometimes too.
Oh, yeah.
But this book is full of philosophical questions, and that is just your happy place.
Oh, I love it. And it's, and what I also love about it is it's not necessarily full of answers. Like it's got situations and you can ponder it, and maybe it steers you one way or the other, but it's like, it's still,
it doesn't make a definitive,
it's still open.
It doesn't try to answer it. It's just
Yeah.
What I don't like about this is that you'll read it at night and then want to talk about it. And I'm like, I am
But I
tired.
want to talk about
I want
it.
to sleep. If you want to talk about these things, the morning is a great time for me.
Or apparently when the kids are napping and we've got microphones in front of us.
Also, a better time than when I'm trying to sleep.
Yeah. So, do we want to talk about the magic systems at all?
Yes.
Okay, because I know you've gone on a few times about the discussion of realmatic theory in this book.
I think it's gonna be. I think we should leave the realmatic theory for the next episode, but at the same time, it's really hard to talk about this magic system without talking about other Cosmere things.
Well, all right. So what, the way that soul stamping works is...
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the way the soul stamping or forgery or remembering or flesh sealing, whatever they call it, right, is they've got,
Okay, so all right.
I was about to say,
let's
like,
just
I
do
don't
a
know how
very
they
basic
work.
realmatic theory because that is the basis of this magic system.
Right.
So the basics is, or the
There's three realms. There's a
three
physical
realms.
world. There's a physical world, which has normal stuff in it. That's where we live. There's a cognitive realm that has,
which is the realm of thought. Yeah.
right. It is influenced by how people perceive things. Right. So it's sort of where like the idea of the table that gets transformed lives. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the spiritual realm, which is where investiture kind of is, the magic. Usually, I think it's a little bit different.
It's the soul of people and objects.
Yeah.
And everything is interconnected.
Yeah.
So the soul stamps actually affect target the spiritual realm, change the object there somehow, and it results in a physical difference.
Yeah.
So when Shai says that the windows wanted to be something better, it's the windows actually are thinking in the cognitive realm, and them thinking that they wanted to be better, to be something different, is what made the stamp, the final stamp take to turn it into a beautiful stained glass window.
Yeah.
So the cognitive realm, how an object thinks about itself or other people think of it, has a huge influence on the forgery. So the spiritual, cognitive, and physical realm are all tied together.
Right. So, and I guess the stamper needs to have an understanding of what they are stamping and, where it came from. And
the history or nature.
The history or nature of it. And then with their knowledge of how stamping works, it's not particularly explained, but they make, some kind of rune or symbol out of kind of any material they have, but they use soulstone. I think it's a fictional material.
Yeah, it's a fictional material.
Called soulstone, and it's especially good for this because it's soft and easy to carve, but then it hardens when it's exposed to fire.
Yeah.
So Shai will make her stamp based on that, and then harden it so that way it doesn't change anymore. And the last part of every stamp is, what is it? The sealing mark, which is in the shape of the city Mapone. It's sort of like a one-line throwaway there, but it's similar to other magic systems we've seen on the same world. It's
Elantris.
Yeah, it's people from Mapone are uniquely able to use this sort of magic, and the farther they get away from Mapone, the weaker it gets, I think.
I don't really remember any references to that, but I don't think we don't know how far away Mapone is.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Most of this book takes place in one freaking room, right?
Yes.
So
the room does change dramatically.
Yeah, but it's still. Is that a Ship of Theseus thing? No. Because is it the same room?
No, we're not gonna get into that.
Is it the same room? Did she change the substance or just the character?
We're not gonna get into that.
Okay. Well, I don't know, man, because it seems like whenever she tries to change the substance of a thing, that makes the stamp be rejected. But when she just changes the character of the thing, I guess in sort of Aristotelian philosophical terms.
I.e., it's harder to change a table into a chair rather than to change the table from a rickety old thing to a beautiful, sturdy masterpiece.
Right, but it's also, if you want to make a change, if you couldn't change just one table leg, right? It would be a lot harder to change just one table leg than the whole table, because the table is substantially one thing.
Oh yeah, because it views itself as a whole table,
right,
rather than a collection of 4 legs and a top.
Yes. So
if you built it from 4, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's, it's like a little wishy-washy kind of thing, but that's, but it doesn't really feel super wishy-washy, right? And the reason why is because, well, if you're trying to do, change something that's not, if you're trying to change multiple things with one stamp or not the whole thing with one stamp, then the stamp just gets rejected. So it's, I don't know. I love it. I love it. Even though it's kind of a wishy-washy sort of magic system, which isn't really how Brando does things, it still works.
We should really talk about something other than philosophy, maybe.
There is nothing else.
We can talk about Shai herself.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, this is a person who has had a very troubled, trying life. I think she admitted to Gautona that her quote-unquote uncle...
her uncle and her aunt.
Uncle Juan, and I forget what the aunt's name is, but they are not real people.
Not real. Yeah.
They are fictional, which we don't fucking learn any more about, other than that they're fake, Brandon.
Why is that a problem?
I want to know more.
What do you mean you want to know more? They're fake. It's her backstory. It's her cover story.
It's a detail out of what seems to be a very traumatic backstory that we don't know all of it.
What do you mean? She's trying to make it easier for her to use that last essence mark to make it get away, to make her get away. So she's got a fictional aunt and uncle that will, take care of her, quote unquote, and will send her letters and things, based on how she's planned it.
If she ever uses that. Right.
But like part of making the essence mark take is that it needs to be kinda, sorta, already,
So you think she's just lying to herself?
Yes.
To make that stamp take better?
Yes.
I still think there's lots to her backstory that we don't know yet.
Well, yeah.
But hopefully we'll find out in the future.
Like I said, I'm okay not knowing everything.
I'm not. I want to know everything.
I don't know, a little bit of mystery
Brandon
is
has
nice.
thought of 10 million details for this story.
Yeah.
And I want to know them all. But it seems that Shai cares deeply for the objects themselves. Like, she thinks of objects as people.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is understandable because she needs to think about them that way.
Yeah.
You can't pause. How many more notes do you have? Oh, okay. All right. The only other thing that I would mention is that there are blood sealers, which seem to be forgers that use blood, and it plays a big part in the end, but I don't know if I have anything too much to mention there.
No, me neither. I mean, there is a blood sealer. The blood sealer's role in the book is mostly to be, how they keep her contained, right?
Right.
But I don't know. It
wasn't the most compelling part of the story.
No, and it's maybe we'll see more blood sealers in future books. Maybe not. It was more there to be, once again, going into, you say that I'm corrupt and impure, and yet you've got a blood sealer who, uses something, that is more viscerally, when you think of blood magic, right? It's not, when you think of somebody using dark blood magic to hold you hostage, that's not generally good. I don't know.
There was a throwaway line that, this blood sealer has proven his worth recently, and we don't know anything about that either. So yeah. I would like to know about that.
Anyway, we've reached the end of our notes, and Kid is waking up from a nap. So thank you for listening to our podcast. This has been Cosmere Casual. If you have any feedback, questions, comments, anything else you want us to talk about, our email address is cosmerecasual@gmail.com. Our intro and outro music is licensed via Tribe of Noise. The artist is Ketsa, and the song is Odyssey.
And until next time, keep your wits about you.